What was the worst decision you saw someone else make? There was one incident in my hometown that made me want to tear my hair out. A family moved in a few years ago. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The mother was looking for work as a teacher, but there was no openings, so she worked as an aide. My mother was on the school board at the time, and she noticed that parents were complaining about the lady, as she was apparently ignoring students and favoring others, getting angry when her children got bad grades from the other teachers, etc. Mom invited her to the next school board meeting to discuss the situation, and the lady went nuts. The conversation broke down into screaming, and the lady swore she would take Mom's spot on the board. Sure enough, when election sign-ups went up online, she was the only person who ran against Mom. After months of an attempted smear campaign, Mom won the election with more than 200 votes. The lady only got 5, all from her extended family. So what does the lady do? She decides to pull both of her children out of public school, as she doesn't want them corrupted by the teachers and the board. The son was a senior in high school, months away from graduation, and the daughter was in middle school. My sister was in her class, and she said the daughter screamed and kicked her mom as she dragged her out of the classroom to check her out, begging her not to do it. She left all of her stuff in her locker, and the school had to send it to them. When Mom heard the news, she was horrified and tried to talk to the family, but the father had been browbeaten by his wife and refused to put the kids back in public. It's been a couple of years since then. The mom homeschooled the kids, but the son works in the oil field and is trying to get his GED. The daughter is a complete rebel and has been arrested numerous times for drunk driving and vandalism. But the mom still has the audacity to act smug whenever someone runs into her at the grocery store. At least my children know how to live in the real world. Sure, Kathy. Keep telling yourself that when you have to bail your kid out from jail. I definitely hate when parents have all the answers. Sadly, it's more widespread than it should be. Hopefully the kids figure it out someday. I went to a party with a friend and she smoked meth. I worked in retail in college and met her there. She was really nice and we had the same sense of humor. After a few weeks, she invited me to a house party in the middle of nowhere, and it was all like all dudes in their 30s. She was dating one of them, and we were like the only girls. I wanted to leave right away because not only were the people weird, but the house was weird too. Like there were no outlet covers on the outlets, and barely any furniture, but there was a stripper pole in the living room. She drove and convinced me to stay for one drink. When I got back from the kitchen with a beer, she asked me if I wanted to smoke meth. She actually called it something else, but I didn't understand and only figured it out after she started explaining it to me. I declined and then watched kind of in shock as she started to smoke it, while her boyfriend started telling me that it wasn't as bad as people think. I ended up calling my boyfriend to come get me and walking to the main road to wait for him because I really didn't want to be near that house. The next time I saw her at work, she told me that a few hours after I had left, a guy who had been punched at the party had called the cops, and she had been too afraid to go back to her car after running from the house, so she had spent the whole night just walking around in the nearby woods. I quit like 2 months later and never saw her again, but my friend who continued to work there told me a few months after the girl was fired for smoking meth in the bathroom at work. Some drugs are just better to stay away from. If you're reading this, remember to be responsible with substances or don't use them at all. My dad watched his best friend for 35 years drink himself into an alcoholic, essentially ruining his own life. They were drinking buddies for a long time, but my dad began to suspect he had a problem and tried to shake him out of it, and quit drinking himself to avoid encouraging him to drink. His best friend's eventual doers, an increasingly protective wife, led to a strain on his relationship with my dad and anyone else he knew from high school and college. Now his wife won't let anybody talk to him ever again. My dad misses him greatly and won't stop telling stories about the antics they used to get up to. when they were kids, always addressing him as uncle. In the last few years, we used to see each other. They started out in the sandbox at age 2 and eventually broke loose in their 30s. This one is pretty sad. Alcohol can be fun in moderation, but I've seen it run way to many lives. My best friend was marrying a girl just because they had a kid together. Everything was working out fine between them as friends, and their daughter, though only 3, seemed happy as well. Then they started to be friends with benefits and began dating again. Out of nowhere they announced that they were getting married. Everyone knew this was a bad idea considering their history, and that marriage shouldn't be a thing you just try one day. Anyway, the wedding day comes, and it's your typical affair. Church, priest, gown, flower girl, cake, etc. It was an uncomfortable experience for us as his friends, since we felt it wasn't set to last between the two of them. We didn't know how right we were. 2 months in, and they're fighting almost every night. He tells me that anything will trigger a fight between them. One night it comes to a head when their fighting becomes physical. She shoves him, he shoves back, she punches him in the chin. He hits her in the left eye hard. Problem is she's petite and only 5 feet tall. Meanwhile, he's a 6 feet 3 in, former bodybuilder. She ended up calling the cops and having him arrested. She now has full custody of their daughter, and he spent 3 weeks in jail over the whole thing. So much for giving marriage a try. This is why you have to be careful who you marry or even court. Stuff like this happens all the time. This goddamn loser friend of mine was so desperate for attention when we were drinking, coupled with his douchebag competitive attitude that's always on. He told this cute girl, mutual friend of ours, to dare him to drink as much of the bottle of vodka as possible in one go. She was confused, because those are some stupid words that came out of his mouth. She said, "Oh, okay. What am I agreeing to?" He drank like 80% of a huge bottle of vodka straight in like 10 seconds. In a desperate attempt to impress this girl, so maybe she'd be so turned on by his willingness to do everything she says, that maybe she'd fuck him. Instead, he got yelled at for being fucking stupid, threw up for like 6 hours, and cried for the rest of the night. I felt bad, but he's a god-awful friend who lost my friendship, so I laugh about it now. I'm 100% certain that he's going to die either drunk, in his car going 120 on some road somewhere, or both. Lol, I never understand when dudes feel like they have to do extreme actions to impress girls. Like, bro, she can see that you're trying too hard.